I'm like still trying to emotionally recover from the collective whiplash of December.
God, tell me about it. I'm so exhausted,
Yeah.
but just like completely wired.
Right. We all lived through that moment where cannabis went from, the ultimate Schedule A federal poison, the whole no medical use federal crime boogeyman.
And then boom, President Trump signs an executive order to move it to Schedule 3.
The whole world just shifted on its axis. For like 48 hours, it felt like everything was different.
My phone just blew up. I mean, every single multi-state operator stock, I don't care if they were on the NASDAQ issue or still slumming it on the OTC, it shot through the roof.
Oh, the euphoria was insane.
It was palpable. The industry reacted like the entire war on drugs was just officially over. Like we were just waiting for the funeral announcement.
But this shit hit the fan almost immediately, didn't it?
Instantly.
The political machine, the one that, theoretically enables the president's order, it just started screeching, wait, we didn't mean that part of the future.
Right. Not like that.
It's genuinely confusing. You have this moment of supposed regulatory enlightenment, and immediately half of Washington is running to the microphones to actively stop their own policy.
It's like watching a train full of politicians crash, and the only thing they can agree on is arguing over who packed the wrong sandwiches.
That is the perfect analogy.
It's the political defiance that just baffles the psychologist in me. But okay, let's be practical. The architect in you has to be focused on the material reality.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get to brass tacks. What does Schedule 3 actually do for the industry right now before we dive into the moral panic?
It's all about the money.
Oh.
I mean, it is 100% about the money. The single biggest, most immediate, quantifiable benefit is the elimination of Section 280E. Period. End of story.
Okay, you have to explain 280E like we're five. Because if I don't get that specific tax code, you don't get why this fight is so vicious.
Right. Okay. So 280E is this part of the tax code originally written for, like, Pablo Escobar. It's for drug traffickers. It prevents any business trafficking a Schedule 1 or 2 substance from deducting any normal business expenses.
And when you say any, you mean?
I mean everything. Payroll for thousands of employees, rent on millions of square feet of gross space, utilities, insurance, marketing, the absolute core costs of running a legitimate multi-billion-dollar business. None of it.
Which meant they were paying federal tax rates that were sometimes, north of 70%?
70–80% in some cases. It wasn't just crippling. It was designed to make the business impossible. It forced this massive inefficiency and kept any small operator from even trying to compete.
Okay, so the moment cannabis moves to Schedule 3, which by legal definition means it has accepted medical use and a lower abuse potential, 280E just goes away. It becomes inapplicable.
Overnight. Just like that. These companies can suddenly deduct all their standard operational costs.
It's an instant, massive financial shockwave.
We're talking about major MSOs suddenly seeing their projected Q4 losses turn into huge profits. We're talking hundreds of millions, maybe billions, in tax savings flowing right back onto their balance sheets.
Which frees up all this capital for national expansion, R&D, patent acquisition, whatever they want.
It's the financial bedrock of this entire transition.
Okay, so the government moves it to Schedule 3, effectively granting the industry a monumental, market-altering tax break. That's the material reality.
Yes.
But then you look at the political response, and the sheer volume of defiance is just, it's absurd. You had this huge coalition of 48 Republican lawmakers.
48.
Yeah.
Including the House Speaker and the entire Senate Republican leadership.
Openly defying the president, urging him to halt the entire process.
They were fighting against a tax cut for American businesses. I mean, that is fundamentally anti-Republican orthodoxy. It's a genuine civil war inside the party.
And it wasn't just the lawmakers in D.C.
No, you had 8 Republican attorneys general, led by the Nebraska AG, who issued this really pointed legal statement. They argued that cannabis is already properly classified as Schedule 1, and the whole move is invalid.
So they're leveraging state legal power to maintain federal prohibition and the massive tax burden that comes with it.
Exactly.
So the psychologist in me is just screaming, why? Is this a real moral panic? Are they genuinely worried about the societal fallout?
No.
Or is it pure, unadulterated political theater designed to slow down the inevitable? Which, in politics, sometimes slowing things down is the same as winning.
It's institutional inertia dressed up as principled opposition. That's what it is. They know they can't stop the regulatory momentum long term.
But they have to signal to their base.
They have to signal that they're the last line of defense against the softening of moral standards. They're fighting the ghost of the drug war, not the reality of the plant in 2026.
It's an identity crisis for the conservative politician, right? For decades, cannabis was the ultimate symbol of moral decay. To suddenly admit it has accepted medical use, which Schedule 3 legally requires, that shatters a foundational moral certainty they built their careers on.
It's too emotionally resonant. They can't just let it go.
And their defiance is so critical because it creates this ongoing regulatory limbo.
Totally. The financial benefit is theoretically there because of the executive order, but the DEA is saying the appeal process is still pending. They could restart the whole thing, or it could be tied up in court for years by these AGs.
It gives the legal challenges time to breathe.
Which means that billion-dollar tax break is just sitting in purgatory. The industry is structurally ready to boom, but the regulatory engine is just completely gridlocked by politics.
Okay, so let's unpack that regulatory limbo, because this is where the architect in me just gets genuinely depressed. Everyone celebrated Schedule 3 as this revolutionary change, but then the Congressional Research Service, the CRS, dropped the ultimate reality check.
Oh, the illusion of freedom report.
Yes, that's what they called it. It clarified exactly what doesn't change, even if rescheduling goes through perfectly. And the list is long. It's frankly heartbreaking if you actually care about social justice outcomes.
Because it fails to fix most of the core issues people actually care about. The things that ruin lives for decades under prohibition.
Precisely. The report found that, okay, specific penalties tied only to schedule I would go away, which is a key win for corporate speech and advertising.
Right, we'll get to that.
But most of the criminal penalties, they remain completely intact. The CRS clarified that the major cannabis trafficking penalties are written directly into the Controlled Substances Act, independent of the scheduling.
So if you get caught trafficking 1,000 kilos or more federally, you're still facing a mandatory minimum of 10 years in prison.
This isn't theoretical, it's codified federal law. Between 100 and 999 kilos, you're looking at a 5-year minimum. Schedule 3 doesn't magically erase the specific enforcement mechanisms designed for marijuana.
The DEA still has the exact same hammer, and they know where to swing it.
And the collateral consequences. That's the real tragedy for the individual. We're talking about employment restrictions, especially for federal jobs or anything with a security clearance.
Gun ownership rights, still gone for users. That's a separate statutory ban tied to illicit drug use.
Eligibility for federal benefits like housing assistance or student loans?
Yeah.
Still potentially restricted.
And the biggest one, immigration. The consequences for immigration status. Schedule 3 does not fix the grounds for being deemed inadmissible or being removed based on a cannabis violation. That's a whole separate, massive body of law that is completely untouched.
So let me get this straight. The biggest beneficiaries are massive corporations who can now deduct payroll and rent.
Yep.
But the individual with a medical card trying to get an FHA loan or just maintain their legal immigration status is still functionally screwed.
The systemic design prioritizes corporate finance over individual civil rights. The architecture of it.
But we can't completely dismiss that one key win you mentioned, the advertising provision.
Okay, yeah, that is a huge deal. Under Schedule 1, federal law made it explicitly illegal to advertise a scheduled substance in any major publication or medium.
And now, under Schedule 3, that rule is just gone.
That is the door the industry needed to be opened.
It's massive for their ability to normalize and professionalize the product. This is where the money starts flowing into legacy media. We're talking national TV, major digital platforms, high-traffic websites, maybe even major sports leagues.
You'll see specialized cannabis advertising companies pop up everywhere. This is a multi-billion-dollar monetization path that was explicitly blocked before.
It allows for sophisticated brand building, national campaigns, the kind of normalization that leads directly to wider social acceptance.
Which, unfortunately, as we're about to discuss, also means wider consumption. It legitimizes the corporate narrative to a degree that was never possible before.
Which brings us directly to the state-level rebellion, this absolute patchwork chaos we're seeing on the ground.
Right. While states like Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Wyoming are using the Schedule 3 momentum to push for full expansion,
arguing the medical stigma is dead, so it's time to go all in.
you have these established legal markets fighting back against themselves.
You're seeing ballot initiatives in places like Maine, Massachusetts, Arizona, where this legalization fatigue is setting in. People are actively trying to repeal or roll back existing laws.
It's a genuine populist rebellion against commercialization.
Yeah.
The argument is basically, We wanted decriminalization. We wanted personal medical access.
But we got corporate-branded, high-potency gummy bears sold next to the cheap vodka at the corner store. They're rejecting the big cannabis model.
I saw one of the main initiatives was accused of using these super deceptive tactics. The signature gatherers were telling people it was about product safety.
When it was actually designed to do what?
To eliminate regulated recreational sales entirely,
Right.
including home cultivation rights. It's just cynicism driving the entire political transaction on both sides.
And this state-level regulatory fog just got a massive policy wrench thrown into its engine.
Oh my God, the collapse of the intoxicating hemp bubble. This was pure legislative destruction of an entire sector.
The Wild West market. Delta-8, THCA, flower, all the derivatives that exploited that loophole in the 2018 Farm Bill.
The one that only regulated Delta-9 THC by dry weight.
And that market exploded. It reached, what, $21.8 billion in sales in 2025?
22% of all U.S. THC sales.
Mhm.
Legal, illicit, and hemp combined. That's a colossal number.
And they did it by getting into convenience stores, gas stations, liquor stores, places regulated dispensaries can never touch.
Edibles grabbed 27% of that market. Beverages got 21%. The convenience factor was everything. People were drinking THC sodas that were projected to just keep growing like crazy.
But then the FY26 Agriculture Appropriations Bill just redefined hemp. It just closed the loophole.
They restricted finished hemp-derived products to a maximum of 0.4 milligrams of total THC, including THCA per container.
0.4 milligrams.
Let's be crystal clear for everyone listening. A microdose edible is usually 2 to 3 milligrams. A standard dose is 5 to 10.
So 0.4 milligrams is effectively a trace amount. It's nothing.
It means no finished product designed to get you high can be legally sold to the hemp channel anymore. They just kill the entire intoxication market.
That is a legislative shockwave that just evaporated $21.8 billion worth of established sales overnight.
And now those manufacturers are facing criminalization, unless they can somehow pivot into the state-regulated dispensary system.
Which means mountains of new rules, massive overhead, and a much smaller retail footprint. The incentives are just gone.
The architect in me sees a massive contraction and consolidation. That revenue doesn't just disappear. It either goes back to the illicit market or it funnels directly to the big MSOs who can meet the regulated market demands.
The biggest players in the legitimate cannabis space just got a multi-billion-dollar gift from Congress.
That's the mechanism of influence right there. Regulation often doesn't protect the little guy. It reinforces the dominance of the entrenched players by raising the barrier to entry.
And this theme of unforeseen, devastating negative public health consequences, it brings us directly to Germany, which is running the most critical and frankly terrifying case study on this right now.
The German experiment.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be the sensible ones, the public health-focused model.
They adopted this two-pillar framework designed explicitly to prioritize public health over corporate profit, unlike our North American cash grab.
But their utopia is completely stalled, and the data coming out of it is just terrifying.
So, Pillar 1 was non-commercial cannabis social clubs, CSCs, and home growing. Pillar 2 was supposed to be these regional commercial pilot projects.
And Pillar 1, the social clubs, is a bureaucratic nightmare. They had, 444 applications for CSC licenses by early 2025?
And only 83 had been granted. That's an insane amount of friction. That backlog is preventing legal nonprofit access, which just drives people straight back to the black market they already know.
Exactly. And Pillar 2, the actual commercial retail pilot projects, that's completely stalled. International treaties, federal hurdles. First retail sales are now slipping to late 2026, maybe even 2027.
So the state's attempt to gently regulate access created so much friction that it just kept the black market alive and thriving.
Exact thing they were trying to fight. But the real crushing blow is the late 2025 quantitative projection model.
This is the data we have to stare into. This study wasn't just measuring consumption, it was calculating quality-adjusted life year losses, QALYs.
Right, you have to understand QALY. It's the gold standard metric used globally to measure health interventions. One QALY is 1 year of perfect health. If you lose QALYs, you are measuring a quantifiable loss of health and quality of life across an entire population.
They were literally quantifying the societal burden versus the societal gain of legalization.
So they compared the QALY gains from reducing exposure to contaminated black market weed fewer pesticides, known THC content,
against the QALY losses projected from increased rates of cannabis use disorder, or CUD, and all the associated long-term mental health issues that come from easier access and normalization.
And the conclusion is just brutal.
The model projects that the health losses from increased cannabis use disorder will be approximately 19 times greater than the health gains from reducing exposure to contaminated black market cannabis.
Wait, stop. Say that again?
A 19-to-1 ratio of harm to gain.
So the entire public health justification for legalization, getting rid of pesticides, synthetic cannabinoids, unknown potency, is mathematically drowned out by the societal cost of increased use, addiction, and mental illness.
That is the stinging conclusion. The variables that drove that overwhelming harm were increased rates of CUD, the severity of those diagnoses, and crucially, the projected long-term mental health outcomes like psychosis and schizophrenia linked to high-potency, easy-access products.
So the small benefit of cleaner weed cannot offset the massive cost of more weed.
It can't. This means we aren't optimizing for public health. We're optimizing for consumer convenience and tax revenue. And the German model, which explicitly tried not to do that, failed anyway.
The threshold for net harm must be incredibly low then.
Frighteningly low. The study found that even a single modest 1% increase in cannabis use across the population is enough to produce net population-level harm when you measure it in QALYs.
So the margin for a safe legalization, one that actually improves public health, is almost non-existent.
That's a fundamental indictment of every commercial legalization model operating right now.
Okay, let's talk about the projected human cost they calculated, because that's the bill that Germany and frankly every legalized state is going to have to pay.
Their conservative projection is an increase of 400,000 to 800,000 new regular users in Germany.
And that increased exposure is projected to result in.
What was it? Approximately 2,300 additional cases of severe long-term mental health conditions, like psychosis or schizophrenia, annually.
2,300 new cases of severe, persistent mental illness every single year, because access got easier.
That societal bill, the hospitalization, the long-term care, lost productivity, the family trauma, it just dwarfs any incremental tax revenue.
It does, and this connects directly to the adolescent brain integrity concerns we've seen highlighted in all those neurodevelopmental studies.
The vulnerable window. Adolescence is when your brain is under heavy construction. Synaptic pruning, myelination, the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain, isn't fully built until your mid-20s.
And introducing high-potency THC during that time is literally interrupting critical infrastructure development. You're altering the foundational architecture of the adult mind.
The longitudinal studies tracking young men from age 13 to 20 confirmed it. Early onset, frequent use like weekly or more, was significantly associated with a measurable lasting decline in verbal IQ and executive function by early adulthood.
And a verbal IQ drop is tied directly to your whole academic and professional potential. The psychologist in me just gets emotional here because we focus so much on the rights of the adult consumer, which is important.
But we can't ignore the proven neurological harm to the younger generation who are inevitably going to access these normalized products.
In every country that legalizes, consumption rates among young people tend to rise, even with regulations trying to stop it. The normalization is the driver. That 19-to-1 harm ratio is the scientific manifestation of that paradox.
Jesus. Okay, I need a breath. That German data is genuinely depressing. It makes every cynical assumption I have about corporate intent feel completely justified.
But let's pivot. Let's pivot to the one area where cannabis is an unquestionable scientific good, because it creates this perfect mind-bending paradox. We have to talk about the psychedelic renaissance.
For the therapeutic side, this is the ultimate counterpoint. Here, the plant isn't a societal opiate. It's a precision pharmaceutical instrument for healing.
And the biggest story of late 2025, without question, was Vertanical's VER-01.
The blockbuster cannabis-derived therapy. This, to me, is the real exit ramp from the American opioid crisis we've been looking for.
Okay, tell us about the Phase 3 trial specifics.
These were massive, rigorous Phase 3 clinical trials, published in top journals, Nature Medicine, Pain and Therapy. They put VER-01, which is a standardized full-spectrum cannabis extract, head-to-head against the current standard of care opioids for chronic low back pain.
And the results weren't just equivalent. They were superior across the board. That's a huge win in pain research.
Superior pain relief, yes, especially in patients with a neuropathic pain component, which is often really hard to treat. We're talking statistically significant improvements on the pain scales compared to the opioid group.
On average, patients got over a 50% reduction in pain intensity by 6 months.
Yeah, with a strong p-value significance maintained throughout the entire follow-up period.
That's the hard clinical metric. But the side effect profile is where it really destroys the opioid market.
Absolutely. The clinical advantage was profound. People on VR01 were 4 times less likely to get chronic constipation, a devastating side effect of long-term opioid use.
3 times less likely to need laxatives. They also reported superior sleep quality, which is everything for a chronic pain patient.
Gastrointestinal distress is one of the most insidious, crippling side effects of chronic opioid use. Eliminating that while improving pain relief is revolutionary.
And crucially, the investigators observed 0 cases of dependence or clinically relevant withdrawal symptoms in the VER1 group.
So if this gets approved, and Botanical is planning a U.S. Phase 3 trial in early 2026 for the FDA, this could be the first new class of drug for chronic pain in decades, a non-addictive, superior option.
Okay, so on one hand, we have the German data projecting 2,300 new cases of severe mental illness every year from easy access.
And on the other, we have a standardized cannabis drug proving to be a safer, more effective solution than the addiction engine that killed hundreds of thousands of Americans.
The paradox is almost too sharp to bear.
It defines the current moment. And the therapeutic potential goes beyond physical pain, right? It's moving into severe trauma. Cannabis-assisted psychotherapy, or CAP.
I was reading about its potential for dissociative PTSD, where you feel totally detached from your own body, from reality. It's a hugely underserved population.
Because standard PTSD treatments, like exposure therapy, often don't work for them. The patient is literally disassociated from the traumatic memory.
And the case reports on CAP are showing robust, sustained improvement. It helps patients safely lower their emotional defenses so they can actually process the trauma.
And the subjective reports from patients in these sessions sound a lot like what you hear from people using classic psychedelics, like psilocybin or even ketamine. It serves a similar function.
It highlights that drugs fighting drugs dynamic we're seeing. Psilocybin itself has been linked to persisting reductions in opioid misuse, stimulant misuse.
We're discovering that these traditional, naturally derived medicines are offering a legitimate clinical escape route from the synthetic pharmaceutical dependency of the last few decades.
But this therapeutic renaissance comes with a massive, unavoidable ethical shadow, the appropriation crisis.
This is where the psychologist in me gets angry, and the architect in you sees the ultimate systemic theft.
You can't separate the breakthroughs of psilocybin, ayahuasca, or peyote from their origins. Western science is commercializing traditional indigenous medicines that predate our medical system by centuries.
And the nations who are the stewards of this knowledge are being systematically excluded from the entire process.
Their concerns are so legitimate. Where are the substantive health and economic benefits going back to their communities? They're absent from the research, the clinical trials, the therapy spaces.
It's all led by Western academic and commercial perspectives. The psychedelic industry is poised to be worth $10 billion by 2027.
And these indigenous communities, who often face severe poverty and health disparities, are seeing none of that. 0 investment back into their infrastructure.
Instead, they get the negative side effects, this psychedelic gold rush, spiritual consumerism, exploitative tourism on sacred lands for wellness retreats.
Unsustainable foraging that threatens the very ecosystems where these plants grow. They risk extinction through extraction.
And worse, the violence. Drug cartels are encroaching on traditional territories to get these suddenly valuable substances with little to no federal protection for the people living there.
Western medicine extracts the wisdom, patents the compound, monetizes the treatment, and leaves the original stewards to deal with the chaos, the ecological destruction, and the violence. It's neocolonialism in a shiny therapeutic wrapper.
That is the systemic design of corporate influence, always privatizing communal knowledge and externalizing the risk.
Which brings us right back to the corporate playbook in the U.S. cannabis space, and why that societal opioid threat is so real. When you combine the political maneuvering with the corporate influx, you see history repeating itself.
Structurally, if not chemically.
Yeah, the GLP-1 opioid parallel. I know it sounds crazy, but we're talking about the systemic mechanism of market saturation and regulatory bypass.
There's this deep concern that non-regulated GLP-1 weight loss drugs, semaglutide, Wegovy, are being marketed so aggressively and compounded without proper oversight.
It mimics the early easily accessible stages of the opioid crisis. The risk is easy access, aggressive marketing, and the potential for abuse. Not necessarily chemical addiction, but a dependency on the effect.
It's that feeling of a medical product being pushed too fast, too hard, with companies trying to bypass the FDA's rigorous safety protocols through compounding pharmacies. It creates a regulatory free-for-all.
The aggressive monetization of dependency, regardless of the product.
And that's exactly the strategy Big Pharma and Big Tobacco are bringing to cannabis. This isn't just Curaleaf for Green Thumb anymore. This is Pfizer, Jazz Pharmaceuticals, Altria, and Molson Coors.
The pharma giants are accumulating the patents.
Right.
Synthetic cannabinoids, specific delivery methods, they're controlling the future therapeutic landscape. Pfizer bought Arena Pharmaceuticals specifically to corner the market on cannabinoid-based therapy research.
And Big Tobacco and Big Beverage are dominating the recreational distribution channels. Altria's huge investment in Kronos Group isn't just about money. It's leveraging their high-tech vape platforms, the same tech perfected for nicotine, and integrating it with their national distribution muscle.
They control the pipes and the plumbing. Molson Coors is doing the same with logistics. They're using their established cold chain distribution networks to accelerate the growth of cannabis drinks.
And we saw why that matters. Beverages are forecasted at a 14.6% compound annual growth rate. Retailers are literally swapping out craft beer shelf space for high-potency cannabis drinks.
They are using existing influence mechanisms to flood the market with highly engineered experiences.
So the corporations design the mechanism of consumption, which means if the product is high potency and consumption is widespread, the state and the employer needs a way to police the impaired body in real time.
We're moving from the corporate structure to the necessary surveillance architecture.
This is so critical because the existing system is broken. Traditional drug tests, urine, hair, are functionally useless for measuring cannabis impairment.
They just tell you if a person has used THC sometime in the last few weeks. They don't correlate with functional impairment at all.
You can test positive and be perfectly sober. You can be impaired and test negative, which is why impairment detection technology, IDT, is moving from niche R&D to mandatory compliance.
IDT is the essential real-time solution. It focuses on functional performance, reaction time, coordination, cognitive capabilities, rather than historical drug use.
It doesn't care what drug you took. It cares if you can operate machinery safely right now.
Okay, so what does this tech look like in practice? There are three main categories rolling out, and this affects everyone, not just people in high-risk jobs.
First, oculomotor systems, like from a company called Gaze. They use VR headsets or eye tracking sensors to analyze involuntary eye movements, nystagmus, pupil response, which are highly accurate biomarkers for THC intoxication.
Second, psychomotor tests. Think of tools like Alert Meter. It's a tablet or mobile test measuring reaction time and attention. This is coming to your company's entrance kiosk to determine fitness for duty.
And third, physiological methods. This is the more advanced end. In-vehicle systems or portable FNIRs, brain scanning functional near-infrared spectroscopy.
That's the one that identifies real-time changes in brain blood oxygenation. It's non-invasive, highly accurate, perfect for law enforcement in the field.
And this tech isn't just an option anymore. It's being mandated by regulation. It's coming to your everyday life. The EU mandated drowsiness detection in all new vehicles in 2024.
And here in the U.S., the HA Act mandates in-vehicle impairment detection driver monitoring cameras, passive alcohol sensors in all new cars by 2026.
This technology is projected to prevent over 10,000 fatalities a year. The need to police the impaired body in a world of high-potency cannabis is creating a mandate for biometric surveillance in the car you buy.
But the irony is, this policing framework might also enable a new kind of freedom for medical users. The shift to Schedule 3 is a potential game changer for the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA.
Because Schedule 3 acknowledges currently accepted medical use. Under Schedule 1, employers could universally deny any accommodation requests because the substance was federally illegal. Full stop.
The rescheduling might be the catalyst for the ADA to require employers to offer reasonable accommodations for employees with valid medical cannabis prescriptions. For chronic pain, PTSD, anxiety, This is a massive shift in employee rights.
But, and this is a huge but, the corporate countermeasure remains absolute. Employers can still discipline for actual impairment on the job.
Right. So testing positive for metabolites won't be enough to fire you if you have a prescription, but showing slowed reaction time on an IDT screening for fitness for duty.
That's the proof point they need to protect workplace safety and justify dismissal.
So IDT becomes the required legal lever for managerial control in a post-Schedule III world. It enables medical freedom, but simultaneously enables functional, real-time surveillance. The new system manages the risk created by the old system. It's all connected.
It creates such a fascinating, dark synthesis, doesn't it? We started with the absolute absurdity of the politics Republicans fighting against a monumental tax break. But that absurdity just hid the real structural tensions.
We have genuine life-changing therapeutic tools in the pipeline. VER-01, a non-addictive extract superior to opioids.
Yeah.
CAP, a groundbreaking trauma therapy. That's the promise of healing.
But these profound triumphs are absolutely dwarfed by the cold, hard projections of 19 times greater public health harm from commercialization, proven by the German QA data. The societal cost of widespread consumption is mathematically heavier than the benefits of cleaning up the black market.
And the regulatory frameworks, whether it's Germany's called utopia or America's capture by big tobacco and big pharma, are failing to contain the inevitable corporate strategy of high-potency, ubiquitous proliferation.
The irony is brutal. We pushed for legalization to stop the black market's contamination. The pesticides, the synthetics, we were trying to regulate away a disease.
But if the data holds true, if the societal cost of the legal market's proliferation, measured in QALYs and new cases of severe mental illness, is 19 times worse than the harm caused by the disease we were trying to regulate away,
then the cure is worse than the disease.
and that's the final question we have to grapple with. What happens to the intention behind cannabis use when the distribution, the patents, and the branding are controlled by the same forces that gave us the opioid crisis and aggressively marketed tobacco?
Are we optimizing for public health and true healing? Or are we just maximizing corporate profit within a medically acknowledged but poorly controlled legal framework?
It feels like the full circle betrayal. The thing that was supposed to save us is now just a highly profitable machine that might create a new systemic generation of cognitive and physical dependence.
And that's the conundrum of 2026. What do you prioritize? The tax revenue or the 19-to-1 cost? Something to mull over until next time. This was a heavy one.
Too heavy. I need another fucking drink. Good night, everyone.